TOEFL! Before we start, don't forget to like and subscribe. Good luck!
Please read through the directions or skip ahead. Passage number 1. Listen to a conversation between a student and an academic advisor.
Good morning, Professor Williams. I wanted to talk to you about studying abroad. I've been considering the program in Spain, but I'm not sure if it's the right fit for me.
Good morning. I'm glad you came by. The Spain program is quite popular. What draws you to it?
Well, I'm a Spanish major, so I think it would be a good way to improve my language skills. But I'm also interested in exploring other cultural aspects like history and art.
That's a great point. Studying in Spain would definitely help with language immersion, and you'd be surrounded by art and history. Have you thought about how this experience might align with your academic goals?
I want to become fluent in Spanish, of course, but I'm also hoping to do research on Spanish literature for my senior thesis. I'm not sure if I'd have access to those resources while abroad.
I see. What you might want to consider is looking into the academic offerings of the universities there. Some programs have special courses or even access to local archives that could be very beneficial for your research.
That's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that. Do you know if I would be able to meet with a professor who specializes in Spanish literature while I'm there?
It's definitely possible. The Spain program has partnerships with several universities, and many students have had the opportunity to work closely with faculty members on specific projects. I'd recommend reaching out to the program coordinator for more details on that.
I will. Thanks for the suggestion. Do you think it's better to study abroad for a semester or a full academic year?
That really depends on your personal and academic situation. A semester is great for an initial immersion experience, but a full year would allow you to really deepen your understanding and complete a more comprehensive research project. You might also want to think about how it fits with your graduation timeline.
That makes sense. I'll consider it. Thank you for all your help, Professor Williams. I feel like I have a clearer direction now.
You're welcome. Don't hesitate to come back if you have more questions. And remember, studying abroad can be a transformative experience, so take your time in making the decision.
What is the main topic of the conversation? What is one reason the student wants to participate in the study abroad program in Spain? What does the academic advisor imply when he says this?
You might want to consider looking into the academic offerings of the universities there.
Which of the following are two responses given by the advisor to the student's question about whether to study abroad for a semester or a year? What does the advisor suggest the student do to learn more about the program's academic offerings? Passage number 2. Listen to part of a lecture in an economics class.
Today we are going to discuss inflation and how it affects an economy. Inflation is the rate at which the general level of prices for goods and services rises, eroding the purchasing power of currency. Governments and central banks try to control inflation by adjusting interest rates. When inflation is high, it can lead to a decrease in the value of money, making everyday items more expensive. A modest level of inflation is usually a sign of a growing economy, but when inflation spirals out of control, it can cause significant economic challenges.
Professor, what's considered a modest level of inflation?
Great question. A modest level of inflation is typically around 2 to 3% annually. This level allows for growth without drastically reducing purchasing power. Anything higher can be concerning, while too low can signal stagnation. Now, who can explain what happens when inflation rises too quickly?
Isn't it true that when inflation rises too fast, wages often can't keep up with price increases, reducing people's standard of living?
Exactly. Rapid inflation can cause wages to lag behind rising prices, which means people are able to buy less and their quality of life decreases. What do you think happens to interest rates when inflation rises?
Central banks usually raise interest rates to slow down inflation.
That's correct. By increasing interest rates, central banks make borrowing more expensive, which helps reduce spending and slow inflation.
What is the lecture mainly about? According to the professor, which of the following is true about inflation? What is the professor's attitude toward inflation? What does the professor imply when he says this?
A modest level of inflation allows for growth without drastically reducing purchasing power.
Why does the professor mention central banks raising interest rates? What could happen if inflation rises faster than wages, according to the student? Passage number 3. Listen to part of a lecture in a film studies class.
Today, we're going to talk about the evolution of special effects in the film industry. Special effects, or SFX, have been a crucial part of filmmaking for more than a century. The earliest forms of special effects date back to the late 19th century, with filmmakers like Georges Méliès, who used practical effects like stop motion and multiple exposures to create illusions. As the industry grew, so did the complexity of these effects. By the 1970s, practical effects were reaching new heights with films like Star Wars, which used miniatures and motion control cameras to create space battles. However, a significant turning point came in the 1990s with the rise of computer-generated imagery, or CGI. Films like Jurassic Park and Terminator 2 showcased the potential of combining practical effects with computer graphics. Since then, CGI has transformed the industry, allowing filmmakers to create entire worlds and characters that would have been impossible with practical effects alone. Today, the line between practical and digital effects is often blurred. Modern blockbusters frequently use a mix of both, as practical effects can provide a sense of realism that CGI sometimes lacks. Despite the advantages of CGI, many filmmakers still value the tactile nature of practical effects. For instance, Christopher Nolan's films often rely heavily on practical effects to maintain a sense of authenticity. But what does the future hold? Advances in technology like virtual reality and AI-generated imagery may once again change the landscape of film production.
What is the lecture mainly about? According to the professor, which of the following are true about the use of CGI in film? What is the professor's attitude toward practical effects in modern filmmaking? Why does the professor mention the film Star Wars? What does the professor imply about future advancements in film technology? Which filmmaker does the professor mention as someone who values practical effects? Passage number 4. Listen to a conversation between a student and a school librarian.
Hey, hi, Jamie, right?
Yes.
Great, welcome back. How can I help you today?
Hi, I'm having some issues with finding resources for my research paper. I've been trying to use the library's online database, but it's not really working the way I expected.
Oh, I see. Could you tell me what specifically isn't working? Are you having trouble accessing the database, or is it more about finding relevant materials?
Both, actually. First, when I try to log in from home, it keeps saying access denied, even though I'm using the right password. I thought we were supposed to be able to use the library's resources off campus.
Yes, you should definitely be able to log in remotely. Have you cleared your browser's cache or tried using a different browser? Sometimes that fixes the issue.
I haven't tried that. I'll give it a shot. But the bigger issue is that when I'm on campus and I do manage to log in, I'm not finding the articles I need. I'm researching the environmental impacts of renewable energy, and most of the articles I'm finding are either too old or irrelevant.
That's frustrating, I'm sure. Are you using the advanced search filters? You can set the date range, limit the sources to peer-reviewed journals, and even specify certain topics within environmental science.
I did try using the filters, but maybe I'm not using them correctly. I've only been searching by keywords.
Keywords are a good start, but using the filters will really narrow down your results. I'd recommend setting the date range to the last 5 years for more recent studies. Also, you can try using Boolean operators like AND or AND NOT to combine keywords in a more precise way. For example, you could search renewable energy and environmental impact and policy to get articles that focus on those specific areas.
Oh, that's a good idea. I didn't realize I could combine keywords like that.
Yes, and if you're still not finding what you need, you can request articles through interlibrary loan. We partner with other universities, and they can send you materials that we don't have.
I had no idea about the interlibrary loan. That would be really helpful, especially since I need some specialized research for my topic.
Exactly. It's a great resource, especially for niche topics. And if you're short on time, you can always schedule a one-on-one research consultation with one of our other librarians. We'd be happy to walk you through the database and help refine your searches.
That sounds amazing. I might have to do that if I keep running into problems. Thank you so much for all the help. I'll try those search tips and hopefully won't need to take up too much more of your time.
No problem at all. If you do run into trouble again, feel free to come back or send me an email.
Will do. Thanks again.
You're welcome. Good luck with your research.
What is the lecture mainly about? What are the students' main complaints about the library? What does the librarian suggest the student do to narrow down search results? How does the student feel about the issues with the library's resources? What does the librarian imply when he says,
You can request articles through interlibrary loan.
Passage number 5. Listen to part of a discussion in an art class.
Now, some believe that art simply reflects the world around us, while others argue that it has the power to shape society itself. But regardless of where you stand, it's clear that art plays an essential role in human culture. Let's start by thinking about how art has been used throughout history. From cave paintings to modern digital art, humans have always sought to express themselves visually. But art is more than just self-expression. It's also a way of communicating ideas, values, and emotions. For example, ancient religious paintings often conveyed moral lessons, while today, street art might address political issues or social injustices. So, can art change society? I believe it absolutely can. Take Pablo Picasso's Guernica, for instance. That painting wasn't just a reflection of the Spanish Civil War, it was a condemnation of violence and suffering, and it inspired political dialogue across Europe. Art like this does more than depict reality. It challenges viewers to think, feel, and even act. However, art's influence isn't always direct or immediate. Sometimes it works subtly over time. Think about the impact of the Renaissance. Artists during that period, such as Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, were inspired by the idea of humanism, the belief in human potential and achievements. Their work not only reflected the intellectual changes happening in Europe at the time, but also helped shape the ideals of individualism and self-expression that we value today. Another example is the modern art movement, which often pushes against societal norms. Abstract and surrealist artists like Salvador Dali challenge traditional ideas of what art should look like, and in doing so, they encourage society to question other long-standing conventions, from politics to gender roles. This is why art is often a tool for revolution. It can make people question the status quo and imagine new possibilities. But art also has a different kind of power. the ability to bring people together. Public art, such as sculptures or murals, creates shared spaces where communities can come together to experience and interact with it. These works often foster dialogue, whether it's about local history, culture, or contemporary issues. Art in this way isn't just about the individual artist or the viewer. It's about community and creating connections. To sum up, art doesn't just mirror society, it's an active participant in shaping it. Whether through challenging norms, conveying political messages, or bringing communities together, art plays a critical role in societal development. It's up to us, as both creators and viewers, to recognize its potential and use it as a means for positive change.
What is the lecture mainly about? What is the professor's opinion about art's influence on society? The professor discusses the role of Guernica. What does she emphasize about this painting? According to the professor, how did Renaissance art influence modern society? What does the professor imply when she says this?
Art can make people question the status quo and imagine new possibilities.
Indicate whether each of the following is a reason the professor gives for the role of art in society.
Here is your answer key for this exercise. By practicing regularly with Level Up TOEFL Prep and continuing to refine your skills, you can improve your performance on the TOEFL listening test. Practice active listening, take effective notes, understand different question types, expand your vocabulary, and most importantly, stay focused.